For all of our recorded time we have looked to the heavens, we have charted the wandering lights and the steadfast stars, we built monuments to their passage, composed myths for their origins, and whispered our deepest question into the silent velvet dark. Are we alone? It is a question that has echoed through the grand cathedral of human thought, a query passed from philosopher to poet, from scientist to dreamer. We have filled the emptiness with gods and monsters, with hopes and fears. But the cosmos, in its majestic indifference, has offered only silence, a profound, unending quiet that has defined our place in the universe. We believed ourselves to be a solitary intelligence, a brief, improbable flicker of consciousness on a dust mote of rock, suspended in an immense and unfeeling cosmic ocean. The silence was our context, our cradle, and perhaps our tomb. Until now. Because on a night no different from 10,000 nights before, in the cold, high desert of the Atacama, something changed. Here, under the clearest skies on Earth, giant mechanical ears listen. They are the sentinels of our age, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. Vast dishes turned in unison toward the heart of the galaxy. They do not listen for words or for music. They listen for the hum of creation, the afterglow of the Big Bang, the birth cries of distant stars, and the faint chemical whispers that might betray the presence of life-bearing worlds. For decades, their vigil has been rewarded with the subtle symphony of physics, the predictable, beautiful, and utterly non-sentient chorus of the universe. On this particular evening, Dr. Aris Thorne was at the helm, a veteran of the long, patient search, a man whose career was built on sifting through mountains of cosmic static for a single, anomalous grain of sand. He, like all before him, had grown comfortable with the silence. He expected nothing more than the familiar hum of the void. But then it appeared, a fleeting transient, a spike in the data, lasting mere milliseconds. It was sourced from the direction of Proxima Centauri, our nearest stellar neighbour. Initially it was dismissed, a glitch in the system, atmospheric interference, a passing satellite glinting in just the wrong way. There are 1,000 false positives for every real discovery in this line of work. The universe is a noisy place. Thorne initiated the standard diagnostic protocols. He reran the data, checked the instruments, cross-referenced with other observatories. Everything was nominal. The machinery was perfect. The sky was clear. And yet the ghost remained in the data. A whisper so faint it was almost indistinguishable from the background noise. But it was there, structured, repeating. Imagine standing on a desolate shore listening to the crash of waves. For your entire life the rhythm has been the same, the chaotic, powerful, but ultimately mindless roar of the ocean. Then, for just a moment, buried deep within that roar, you hear a pattern. 3 short crashes, 3 long ones, 3 short again. A cadence. An intelligent, deliberate pulse hidden in the chaos. Your heart would stop. The world would shift on its axis. This was that moment, written in the language of radio waves. The signal was not a clumsy beacon shouting its existence. It was elegant, complex, a masterpiece of efficiency. It was a nested structure of information, a digital Fabergé egg. At its heart, a simple, repeating carrier wave pulsed with the prime numbers. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The universal language of mathematics, a greeting card to any civilization capable of basic arithmetic. This was the knock at the door. But layered on top of this simple pulse was something far more profound, a modulated stream of information of immense complexity. The verification process was a frantic global firestorm of collaboration. Data was shared securely with observatories in China, in Australia, in America. Tense, sleepless nights were spent as the world's greatest radio astronomers independently confirmed Thorne's anomaly. It was real. It was not of Earth, it was not of our solar system, and it was, without any shadow of a doubt, artificial. The silence had been broken. The news, when it finally broke, did not cascade. It detonated. Humanity, for the first time in its existence, shared a single thought. We are not alone. The revelation washed over our planet, erasing borders, trivializing conflicts, and recontextualizing our entire history. Every king, every empire, every war, every poem, every act of love and hate had been performed on a stage we believed was the only one in existence. Suddenly, the curtains had been pulled back, revealing a theatre of infinite size. A global consortium was formed, a meeting of minds unprecedented in our history. Linguists, cryptographers, physicists, artists, and philosophers gathered with a singular purpose: to understand the message. The prime numbers were the key, the simple introduction. But the deeper layers of the broadcast were impenetrable. It was a language not of words, but of fundamental concepts. Think of it like this. Humanity's first attempt to send a message to the stars, the Arecibo message, was a crude pictogram, a stick figure drawing of ourselves, our solar system, and the building blocks of our DNA. It was the cosmic equivalent of a child's crayon drawing. This transmission was different. It was not a picture. It was the textbook from which the picture was drawn. The breakthrough came from an artificial intelligence designed for protein folding. It recognized a pattern not in the sequence of the bits, but in their relational geometric structure. The message was a multi-dimensional dataset. The eye realized the senders were not communicating in a linear fashion, like a sentence. They were communicating architecturally, like a blueprint. They had sent us not a letter, but the design for a library, and within that library the first book was waiting to be opened. The first decoded packet was not a word, but a coordinate system, a way of seeing, a Rosetta Stone for visual information. And then, with agonizing slowness, the first image began to render. In darkened control rooms across the globe, humanity held its collective breath. Pixel by excruciating pixel, a portrait from another world materialized. It was not a grainy image, nor a vague outline. It was a photograph of impossible clarity and resolution. We were looking at a planet, a world we would come to call Viridia. It orbited a pair of stars, a serene orange dwarf and a smaller brilliant white companion. Their mingled light cast strange bifurcated shadows across the landscape. The world itself was a masterpiece of alien biology. Vast continents were carpeted not in green, but in a deep, vibrant crimson. Immense forests of crystalline structures, like trees of spun glass, towered miles into an atmosphere of soft lavender. Its oceans were not blue, but a shimmering metallic silver, as if the planet's seas were made of liquid mercury. Strange, geometric islands, perfectly hexagonal, floated in these silver expanses. Were they natural formations, or the first hint of engineering? The image was a single static vista, a postcard from across the void, but it contained more information, more wonder, and more questions than all the astronomical observations in human history combined. The crimson vegetation hinted at a different photosynthesis, a different chemistry of life. The crystalline forest spoke of a geology and biology beyond our wildest dreams. It was a world both beautiful and profoundly, deeply alien. We stared at this impossible landscape, this silent testament to another genesis. And as we absorbed the sheer reality of Viridia, the data stream offered more. The decryption process, now guided by the first image's key, accelerated. A second file began to unspool. This one was different. It was not a landscape. There were no crimson forests, no silver oceans. The second image was of something constructed. It was a view from orbit, looking down upon the night side of another world. But this world was not dark. It was alive with light, a latticework of such complexity and scale that it dwarfed our comprehension. It was not a collection of cities like the scattered jewels of Earth at night. It was a single, planet-spanning structure, an ecumenopolis, a world city. We called it Cygnus X1 Alpha, after the constellation from which its signals seemed to emanate. The lights were not the chaotic yellow-white sprawl of human civilization. They were soft, flowing bioluminescent blues and greens, moving in slow, deliberate rivers of energy across the continents. The structure was not built upon the planet. It seemed to be integrated with it. Great arteries of light pulsed from the poles to the equator, weaving through mountain ranges that were themselves sculpted and terraced, and diving into the depths of oceans that glowed from within. There were no harsh angles, no rigid grids. The entire planetary construct seemed organic, as if it had been grown, not built. It was a fusion of technology and biology on a scale we could barely process. We were not looking at a city. We were looking at a planet-sized organism, a symbiotic network of life and technology so advanced it existed on a plane far beyond our own. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly humbling. This was not a message of greeting. This was a statement of existence, a demonstration of capability so profound it shattered our every conception of what a civilization could be. The Fermi paradox, the great cosmic question of where is everybody, where was answered. They were not hiding. They were simply operating on a level we were previously too primitive to even perceive. We were like an isolated tribe on a remote island, suddenly seeing a satellite image of the entire planet's global network. The philosophical and existential shockwave was immense. Religions reeled, attempting to incorporate this new revelation into millennia of doctrine. Governments, for a brief shining moment, looked beyond their petty squabbles. The knowledge that a civilization like Cygnus X, 1 Alpha, existed made our terrestrial divisions seem like arguments between ants. For the first time, we were forced to see ourselves not as Americans or Chinese or Russians, but as Terrans, humans, the inhabitants of the third planet around a very average star in a quiet suburban spiral arm of the galaxy. The signal was a gift, a treasure chest of unimaginable value. It contained no threats, no demands. It was an encyclopedia, a galactic primer. As our best minds continued to delve into its layers, they found more. The mathematics of space-time manipulation, the physics of zero-point energy, blueprints for technologies we couldn't hope to build for 1,000 years, star charts of exquisite detail, mapping out our local galactic neighbourhood. It was a complete guide to becoming a galactic citizen, a welcome to the universe package. But with this immense gift came a chilling question. Who sent it? And more importantly, why? Was this an act of pure altruism? A benevolent elder race nurturing the galaxy's newcomers? Or was it something else? A test? A way of seeing which of the galaxy's fledgling species were mature enough to handle this kind of knowledge responsibly? The signal contained vast amounts of scientific data, but not a single word about its creators. No image of their form, no history of their culture, no hint of their philosophy. They gave us the complete works of Shakespeare, but no information about the author. They were a civilization of unimaginable power, and they remained a total enigma. A new space race began, but not one of nations. It was a race of the human species against its own limitations. All resources were poured into two objectives. First, to listen better, to build new telescopes, vast and sensitive, to scan the heavens for other whispers, other members of this galactic club. Second, to begin the long, arduous journey of trying to respond. Not with a simple radio message, but with something worthy. A probe, perhaps, guided by the star charts they had provided. A journey that would take centuries, a message from one generation to a distant future one. The world was transformed. Children in classrooms no longer just learned the history of their nations, they learned the astrometry of Viridia and the speculative sociology of Cygnus X 1 Alpha. The greatest minds of our generation were not drawn to finance or law, but to xenolinguistics, theoretical physics, and interstellar engineering. We had a new frontier, a new purpose, a reason to look up and to look forward. And then, deep within the now almost fully decoded data stream, the final piece of the puzzle was unearthed. It was the origin point of the broadcast. Our astronomers had traced it to the Cygnus constellation, of course. But the new data allowed them to pinpoint the exact location with stunning precision. The signal was not coming from a star system within the constellation. It was not coming from a star at all. Its point of origin was a patch of space that was, by all accounts, empty. A dark, cold, desolate void between the stars. There was nothing there, no star, no nebula, no planet. And yet, from this nothingness, the most important transmission in history had emanated. The scientists checked the data again. There was no mistake. The calculations were perfect. The implications were staggering. The signal was not a live broadcast. It was a recording, an echo, a prepackaged message left behind, triggered to transmit when it detected the crude radio leakage of an emerging technological species like our own. It was an automated cosmic lighthouse, sweeping its beam across the stars, waiting for a ship to finally see the light. The senders were not in that empty patch of space. Perhaps they never were. Perhaps it was just a convenient, quiet spot to build a transmitter. Or, and this was the thought that haunted the dreams of a generation, perhaps they were long, long gone. A civilization that had reached the pinnacle of existence, that had solved the deepest mysteries of the universe, and had then vanished, leaving behind only this monumental legacy, this inheritance for the children of the galaxy who would come after them. We were not just students who had found a teacher. We were archaeologists who had unearthed the library of a lost civilization, a civilization so advanced we had no frame of reference to even guess at their fate. Did they ascend to a higher plane of existence? Did they succumb to a threat so profound it could erase a Type 3 civilization? Did they simply grow tired of the physical universe and depart it? The silence that had been broken returned, but it was a new kind of silence. It was not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of absence, the quiet of a grand hall after the orchestra has finished playing and gone home. We were left with their ghost, their magnificent echo. We had their knowledge, their science, their map of the stars, but we did not have them. The question was no longer, are we alone? We knew now that we were not. The universe was, or at least had been, teeming with intelligence, with wonder. The new question was deeper, more poignant. Are we too late? Today humanity is united in a way it has never been. We are the inheritors of a vast and silent legacy. Our task is now clear: to learn, to grow, to explore, to use the incredible gift we have been given to reach for the stars ourselves, to become a species worthy of the knowledge we now possess. Perhaps one day we will travel to Viridia and walk among its crimson forests. Perhaps we will find a way to reach the world city of Technosignatures 1 Alpha and learn what became of its builders. Or perhaps we will be the ones to carry the torch forward, to become the next voice in the cosmic chorus. The signal has changed us forever. It has given us a sense of scale, a sense of humility, and a sense of destiny. We are no longer just a species of a single planet. We are the children of the stars, and we have finally received our birthright. Our journey is just beginning. The universe is waiting. And for the first time we know that somewhere in the deep and distant past, someone believed we would be ready. A vast, intricate dish of woven steel, a silent chalice cupped toward the infinite lies nestled in a valley carved from the ancient bones of the earth. It is an instrument of audacious, almost sacred ambition, an ear designed on a scale of myth painstakingly engineered to be shielded from the ceaseless self-generated electronic monologue of the world that conceived it. In the stark light of day, it is a perfect white void against the verdant living tapestry of the surrounding hills, a circle of pure human intention dropped into the chaos of nature. When night falls, it undergoes a profound transformation, becoming a liquid mirror for the celestial ocean, a silvered, silent pond that perfectly reflects the very galaxies it was built to interrogate. For 60 years, a span of time that represents both the full measure of a human life and less than a single insignificant tick of the cosmic clock, this remarkable instrument and its technological brethren have been engaged in an act of unwavering, almost devotional listening. They have been patiently sifting the static of creation, panning the great cosmic river of noise for a single anomalous grain of intelligent, structured gold. They are engaged in the most patient, the most profound, the most audacious, and perhaps the most heartbreaking search in all of human history. For 6 decades, they have collectively posed a single, simple, and elemental question to the universe. And for 6 decades, the universe has answered them with a perfect, unbroken, and profoundly inscrutable silence. The genesis of this grand and patient inquiry was a humble, almost quiet act of profound scientific optimism born in an age of technological ferment and boundless hope. It began in the year 1960, at the very dawn of the space age, a time when the heavens, for so long a realm of myth and distant observation, seemed to have finally swung open with tangible promise. A young and visionary radio astronomer named Frank Drake, then working at the newly established National Radio Astronomy Observatory in the secluded rolling hills of Green Bank, West Virginia, embarked on a project that was at once both rigorously scientific and breathtakingly romantic. With a quiet determination that belied the revolutionary nature of his endeavor, he aimed the observatory's modest 85-foot radio telescope at two nearby and carefully selected stars, Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani. These stars were not chosen for their brightness or their prominence in the night sky, but for their quiet, unassuming similarity to our own Sun. They were stable, middle-aged, main-sequence stars, the kind of stellar parents that might nurture a planetary system with a world like our own. He gave his pioneering experiment the whimsical name of Project Ozma, a subtle and charming nod to the queen of the fantastical faraway land from a beloved children's book. For the very first time in the history of our species, humanity was not merely charting the positions of the stars or measuring the properties of their light. We were actively, intentionally listening for a sign of kinship, a structured, intelligent voice from across the unimaginable abyss of interstellar space. Drake's methodology was a masterpiece of scientific deduction, a brilliant exercise in trying to think like an alien. He knew with a sobering clarity that he could not possibly scan the entire functionally infinite radio spectrum. The cosmic haystack was simply too vast, and his technological needle, detector, was too limited. He needed to make an educated, inspired guess as to where another intelligent species, wishing to be heard, might choose to place their celestial beacon. After much consideration, he settled on a single magical frequency, 1420 megahertz. This is not an arbitrary number. It is the precise resonant wavelength at which cold, neutral hydrogen atoms, the most simple and by far the most abundant element in the entire universe, naturally emit a faint trickle of radio energy as the spin of their single electron flips. Hydrogen is the universal hum, the background chord of the cosmos, a signature that permeates every galaxy, every nebula, every cubic centimeter of the void between the stars. Drake reasoned with a logic that remains compelling to this day, that any technological species with even a rudimentary grasp of radio astronomy would recognize this frequency as a fundamental, universal, and unmistakable constant of nature. It was the logical place to leave a message, a shared and obvious signpost, a cosmic watering hole in the immense and featureless electromagnetic desert where two different species separated by light years and perhaps by incompatible biologies could metaphorically meet and acknowledge each other's existence. For 200 painstaking hours spread over several weeks in the spring of 1960, he and his small dedicated team listened. The faint, ancient radio waves gathered and focused by the great steel dish were amplified and converted into a persistent hiss in a loudspeaker, their subtle fluctuations traced by a delicate vibrating stylus onto a slowly rolling paper chart recorder. They recorded the faint, ever-present, and now famous background radiation from the cosmic microwave background, the fading echo of the Big Bang itself. They recorded the predictable broad-spectrum radio noise generated by the turbulent atmospheres of distant natural stellar phenomena. They found no sharp, unnatural narrow spike of artificiality. They found no repeating pattern, no intelligent pulse, no structured whisper of another mind. Project Ozma concluded not with a momentous world-changing discovery, but with the quiet, continued, and deeply ambiguous hum of an unanswering universe, and yet something fundamental and irreversible had shifted in the human psyche. A formal question had been posed to the cosmos, a new science and a new kind of hope had been born. The great search had officially begun. From those tentative, almost quaint beginnings, the act of listening has evolved over 6 decades into a global enterprise of staggering scale sensitivity and technological sophistication. The single hopeful radio channel of Project Ozma has exploded into a simultaneous, relentless search across billions of distinct channels. The initial poetic focus on the cosmic waterhole, that quiet, protected sliver of the radio spectrum that lies between the natural emission lines of hydrogen H and the hydroxyl radical OH, the constituent dissociated parts of water, very medium of life as we know it, has been expanded to encompass vast, previously unexplored swathes of the electromagnetic landscape. The entire radio sky, from the lowest to the highest frequencies that can penetrate our atmosphere, is now considered the target, a search space of such incomprehensible dimensions that it defies easy analogy. The modest pioneering 85-foot dish has been dwarfed and superseded by a lineage of giant, ever more sensitive electronic ears instruments that are among the largest and most ambitious single structures ever built by humankind. For over half a century, the undisputed and iconic king of these colossal instruments was the Arecibo Observatory in the lush green karst hills of Puerto Rico, a breathtaking 1,000-foot wide dish suspended like a silver web in a natural sinkhole. It was a silent, unblinking, and deeply powerful eye that stared unmoving into the cosmic deep. It was a monument not of conquest or of power, but of pure, unadulterated human yearning for connection. Its tragic, catastrophic collapse in the year 2020 was felt by the global scientific community not just as the loss of a unique and irreplaceable research tool, but as the symbolic death of an old and trusted friend, silent, patient sentinel that had stood its lonely vigil for generations of astronomers. Its formidable legacy is now carried on by a new generation of even more advanced instruments, chief among them the Robert C. Byrd Greenbank Telescope in West Virginia, the largest fully steerable radio dish on the planet. Rising like a modern scientific cathedral from a federally mandated national radio quiet zone, a 13,000 square mile sanctuary where wireless internet cell phones and even microwave ovens are strictly forbidden by law, it operates in a bubble of enforced, almost monastic silence. It is a place dedicated with a singular and almost religious fervor to the task of hearing the faintest possible whispers from the void. These colossal, magnificent machines are engineered to solve a problem of almost absurd and heartbreaking difficulty. An artificial intelligence signal having traversed the unimaginable gulf of light years between the stars would be attenuated by the inverse square law to a power level almost incomprehensibly small. By the time it finally reached the Earth, its faint energy would be billions or even trillions of times weaker than the chaotic random radio noise generated by the natural processes of the universe itself. The act of listening, therefore, is not a passive process. It is an act of extreme computational signal processing, a relentless and high-stakes search for a single whispered word in the heart of a cosmic hurricane. Fleets of powerful supercomputers, running some of the most sophisticated signal detection algorithms ever devised, continuously and tirelessly analyze the incoming torrent of data, searching for one very specific and telltale type, a kind of signal and narrow-band emission. Natural cosmic sources like the turbulent atmospheres of stars, the violent explosions of supernovae, or the sweeping magnetic fields of pulsars tend to generate their radio waves across a very broad range of frequencies. Their characteristic sound is like a roar, a hiss, or a boom. A technological transmitter, however, built by an intelligence that understood the principles of efficiency would be precise. it would focus its precious energy into a very narrow, very specific frequency band, creating an intensely unnatural, sharp and pure spike of energy, a clear and resonant tone against the chaotic, static-laden background of the universe. This is the single elusive needle that the astronomers are searching for in the cosmic haystack. A single, thin, unwavering whistle of pure order in an overwhelming universal chorus of natural chaos. For 60 years, this meticulous, painstaking search has continued, night after sleepless night, year after patient year. The sheer volume of data that has been collected is now measured in exabytes, an ocean of cosmic noise so vast that no human mind could ever hope to navigate it. This ocean is meticulously recorded, archived, and subjected to endless recursive scrutiny. The algorithms have grown ever more clever, ever more refined, learning over time to automatically identify and filter out the known predictable signals of pulsars, of quasars, and most frequently and most problematically of our own noisy technological civilization. The great and profound irony of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is that the primary overwhelming obstacle to hearing the voice of an alien civilization is the constant deafening and inescapable roar of our own. Every single passing communications, satellite, every stray television and radio broadcast reflecting off the ionosphere, every powerful burst of military and civilian radar, every poorly shielded and carelessly used microwave oven in a nearby town can and often does create a signal that momentarily and convincingly mimics all the expected characteristics of a genuine alien beacon. The modern SETI astronomer must therefore first become a master of terrestrial noise, a forensic expert in identifying the thousands of distinct electronic ghosts that haunt our own planet. They are searching for a single exotic and unknown sound in a world that never ever stops talking to itself. The work is methodical, it is painstaking, it is often tedious, and it is almost always profoundly lonely. It is the work of a dedicated patient sentry standing a long and quiet watch on a high, dark wall, staring out into a vast and silent forest, waiting year after year for the single distant flicker of a kindred fire. And the vigil so far has been defined by an almost perfect, an almost absolute record of null results. The cosmic static has remained stubbornly, maddeningly, and beautifully natural. The great dark forest has remained dark. In the long, quiet, and largely uneventful chronicle of this 60-year vigil, there is one anomalous, electrifying chapter. There is one fleeting 72-second moment that continues to haunt the search, a moment that seemed for a brief, heart-stopping instant to break the cosmic monotony. It is a ghost in the data, a single, unexercised whisper from the void that continues to defy all easy and conventional explanation. On the 15th of August in the year 1977, an unassuming volunteer astronomer named Jerry Eman was performing the tedious but critically necessary task of reviewing reams of computer data printouts from the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University. The Big Ear, a strange and wonderful instrument that has since been dismantled, was engaged in a long-term systematic survey of the sky, a project that let the steady, predictable rotation of the Earth sweep its fixed field of view across the star fields of the Milky Way like a slow, patient, and methodical searchlight. As Eamon scanned the endless columns of alphanumeric characters, a simple, elegant code representing the intensity of the received signal at different frequencies, his eyes suddenly fell upon a sequence so extraordinary, so utterly out of place that it seemed for a moment to be an impossible and beautiful mistake. For a period of exactly 72 seconds, the duration of time it took for a fixed point in the sky to transit the telescope's beam, the Big Ear had recorded a signal of astonishing power and almost perfect coherence. It was a perfect textbook, narrow-band signal, located squarely and tantalizingly in the protected hydrogen frequency band, and it was immensely, shockingly strong. At its peak, the signal registered more than 30 times the intensity of the surrounding ambient background noise of the galaxy. The signal's profile over time was a perfect smooth bell curve. It appeared suddenly grew steadily and powerfully in strength as the telescope's beam moved directly across its distant source, peaked precisely in the center of the observation in window, and then faded away just as smoothly and predictably as the telescope swept past. This was precisely the signature one would expect from a genuine distant extraterrestrial source. Overwhelmed by the profound world-altering implications of what he was seeing, Eamon grabbed a red pen, drew a tight, emphatic circle around the anomalous alphanumeric sequence, a sequence that read 6EQUJ5, and scribbled a single, heartfelt, and now legendary word in the margin of the printout: "Wow." This single word became the name and the epitaph for the most mysterious signal ever detected from space. The WOW signal has since become the most famous, the most celebrated, and the most deeply frustrating event in the entire 6-decade history of SETI. It was a single dazzling flare of tantalizing hope, a potential confirmed breakthrough of such world-altering significance that it still sends a shiver down the spine of those who study it. The astronomical community, electrified by the news, responded with an unprecedented urgency, immediately pointing their most powerful and sensitive telescopes back to that same small and now sacred patch of sky in the constellation Sagittarius. They listened for hours. They listened for days. They listened for months. And now they have listened for decades. They have returned to that specific celestial coordinate hundreds and hundreds of times with instruments that are orders of magnitude more sensitive and more powerful than the old Big Ear. They have found nothing. They have found absolute, unblemished, and mocking silence. The signal was a cosmic phantom, a singular one-time event that has never, ever repeated. Its origin remains one of the greatest, most profound, and most maddening unsolved mysteries in modern science. The exhaustive list of potential natural explanations is a testament to the scientific method's unwavering demand for evidence and repeatability over belief and desire. Could it have been a terrestrial signal, a stray, powerful military or civilian broadcast from Earth that somehow bounced off a piece of orbiting space junk and was reflected back into the telescope's beam at just the right angle? This is a remote possibility, but the signal's specific characteristics, particularly its perfect 72-second match to the telescope's sidereal observation window, make a simple random reflection statistically very unlikely. Could it have been a previously unknown and highly unusual natural astrophysical phenomenon, a rare and exotic type of emission from a flaring star, or a brief gravitational lensing event that momentarily amplified a distant, faint background source, perhaps? But in the more than 4 decades that have passed since that day, a period in which our radio surveillance of the sky has become continuous and vastly more sensitive, no similar natural signal has ever been detected from any other source in the sky. This leaves the most extraordinary, the most romantic, and the most unprovable possibility that the WOW signal was a genuine but transient signal from an intelligent extraterrestrial source. Perhaps it was a powerful, sweeping beacon from a distant civilization, a cosmic lighthouse whose brilliant, searching beam momentarily and coincidentally illuminated our planet before moving on in its great galactic arc. Or perhaps it was a one-time targeted broadcast, a message not intended for us at all, a communication between 2 other points that we just happened by sheer dumb luck to overhear for a fleeting moment. We will, in all likelihood, never know the truth. The WOW signal is a perfect and beautiful scientific enigma. It is a single, unrepeatable, and uncorroborated observation. And as such, in the strict and unforgiving court of science, it cannot be considered definitive evidence of anything. It is a cosmic anecdote, a tantalizing and beautiful story of the one that got away. But for those who have dedicated their lives and their careers to the Great Search, it is a symbol of profound and enduring importance. It is a singular spectral reminder that the great silence of the universe may not be absolute, and that a single fleeting and perfectly formed word, heard once and never again, is the most tantalizing, the most beautiful, and the most haunting form of silence imaginable. The modern search for extraterrestrial intelligence has evolved into a discipline that would be almost unrecognizable to the pioneers of 1977. The image of the lone, dedicated astronomer patiently poring over long rolls of paper printouts has been replaced by the reality of a global interconnected network of robotic observatories and a distributed planet-spanning supercomputer of almost unimaginable power. The current vibrant era of SETI is defined and dominated by ambitious, well-funded initiatives like Breakthrough Listen, an unprecedented and visionary $100 million project that represents the most powerful, the most systematic, and the most comprehensive search for extraterrestrial intelligence ever undertaken by our species. This single initiative, funded by private philanthropy, commands thousands of hours of prime observation time on the world's most sensitive and sought-after instruments, including the colossal Green Bank Telescope in the United States and the venerable Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia. Its state-of-the-art, custom-built signal processing systems can scan billions of distinct radio channels simultaneously, targeting, with a relentless and systematic precision, the 1 million closest stars to Earth, plane of the Milky Way galaxy, and the 100 nearest galaxies beyond our own. The torrent of raw data that this project produces on a daily basis is almost beyond human comprehension. In a single day of focused observation, Breakthrough Listen gathers more raw, high-resolution data than all previous SETI projects in history combined. This colossal, ever-growing deluge of cosmic information is far too vast and complex for a small, centralized team of scientists to analyze alone. While powerful, dedicated computer clusters at research universities and data centers around the world perform the primary automated analysis, a significant and ever-growing portion of the collected data has been opened up to the public for scrutiny and analysis. This revolutionary open-source approach to science was pioneered by the visionary SETI at Home project, which first launched in the late 1990s. It was a brilliantly simple and profoundly effective idea, a lightweight piece of free software that allowed anyone with a personal computer and an internet connection to download a small, manageable chunk of raw radio telescope data and use their own computer's idle, wasted processing power to search it for potential signals of interest. The project's iconic and hypnotic screensaver, with its scrolling multicolored frequency charts and its detailed analysis progress bars, turned millions of ordinary passive home and office computers into active contributing nodes of a fast planet-spanning distributed supercomputer. It was a profound and beautiful act of scientific democratization, a project that transformed the esoteric and lonely search from the work of a few specialized academics into a grand collaborative and deeply personal quest for all of humanity. While the original SETI at Home project has since been retired and superseded by more efficient cloud-based centralized systems, its enduring spirit of open global participation has fundamentally and permanently shaped the ethos of the modern search. The cosmic haystack is simply too large, too complex, and too important to be searched by one person or one institution or even one country. It requires a collective planetary effort. The search has also, out of necessity and a growing sense of urgency, broadened its technological and methodological horizons. For the first several decades, the focus of the search was almost exclusively and obsessively on radio waves, the logical and most efficient medium for interstellar communication according to our understanding of physics. But what if a different civilization with a different history and a different set of technological priorities chose to communicate with a completely different medium? What if they chose to communicate not with radio but with light A? Sufficiently advanced and powerful civilization could, in theory, build a laser of almost unimaginable power and focus its brilliant, coherent light into a tight, perfectly collimated, and highly directional beam. For a brief, fleeting moment, a single powerful pulse from such a laser could outshine its parent star by a factor of thousands or even millions, creating a flash of pure, monochromatic and intensely artificial light that would be an unmistakable, unambiguous beacon across hundreds or thousands of light-years of interstellar space. This is the guiding premise of the rapidly growing field of optical SETI. A new and dedicated generation of specialized robotic telescopes now scans the sky, not for the steady, familiar glow of stars, but for these hypothetical nanosecond-long, intensely powerful flashes of artificial laser-like light. They are not listening for a cosmic whisper. They are looking for a cosmic Morse code, a celestial telegraph of pure light pulses blinking silently and deliberately across the vast dark void. And so far, just like the 6-decade-long radio search, the optical search has found only the steady, natural and predictable light of stars and the chaotic, violent and broadband flashes of dying suns. No ordered, rhythmic and intelligent pulse of engineered light has yet been detected. The great lighthouses of the galaxy, if they exist at all, are either dark or they are pointed in another direction. This necessary and welcome diversification of search methods has given rise to a more expansive, more subtle, and perhaps more promising concept: the systematic search for technosignatures. The logic is simple. A civilization, especially a very old, very large, and very powerful one, might not be actively and intentionally trying to communicate with us at all. Its very existence, however, its simple day-to-day metabolic processes on a planetary or stellar scale, should leave a detectable physical footprint on its local environment. One of the most famous, most compelling, and most sought-after of these theoretical technosignatures is the Dyson swarm, or sphere, a hypothetical stellar-scale megastructure built by a civilization to completely enclose its host star for the purpose of capturing its entire stupendous energy output. Such a structure would be a technological artifact on a truly cosmic scale, a work of engineering so vast it would beggar the imagination. From our distant observational perspective, it would have a very clear and very strange signature. It would cause its host star to dim dramatically or to vanish entirely in the visible light spectrum. But the unyielding, inescapable laws of thermodynamics dictate that the colossal amount of energy captured and used by the civilization within the sphere must eventually be radiated away into space as low-grade waste heat. A functioning Dyson swarm would therefore be a colossal and intensely powerful source of long-wavelength mid-infrared radiation. The modern search for technosignatures is thus in large part a patient and meticulous hunt for these strange ghostly objects, stars that are unnaturally and inexplicably dark in visible light, but which blaze with the power of 1,000 suns in the invisible infrared part of the spectrum. It is a form of cosmic archaeology, a search not for a deliberate message, but for the unintentional industrial waste products of a truly galactic civilization. Other, more subtle potential technosignatures are now being actively and systematically considered. A very advanced civilization might engage in stellar engineering, deliberately altering the chemical composition of its host star's atmosphere in ways that would be clearly and unmistakably visible in its absorption spectrum. They might use powerful directed energy beams, either of light or of particles for the purpose of interstellar spacecraft propulsion or for large-scale planetary terraforming projects. These powerful transient beams, if they were to accidentally and momentarily sweep across our solar system, could be detected as strange high-energy events in our telescopes. And as our own technology to study the chemical composition of the atmospheres of distant exoplanets improves, we may soon be able to directly search for the chemical fingerprints of an alien industrial society. The detection of high concentrations of complex artificial and non-biological molecules, such as chlorofluorocarbons or other industrial pollutants, that could not possibly be produced by natural geological or biological processes in Pisces. The atmosphere of a distant Earth-like world would be a powerful, almost undeniable if indirect sign of an active technological presence. The modern search is no longer just a search for a cosmic phone call. It has become a forensic investigation, a search for a footprint, for a shadow, for an echo, for a ruin. It is a search for any sign, however faint, however subtle, however ancient, that another mind has walked upon the cosmic stage. And yet after 6 long decades of relentless listening and patient looking, with ever more powerful tools, ever more clever strategies, and an ever-expanding definition of what we are searching for, the final stark and sobering tally remains stubbornly and immovably unchanged. 60 years, 1 million stars surveyed, billions of channels scanned, 1,000 strange natural phenomena discovered, and zero confirmed, unambiguous and repeatable signals of intelligent technological life. The cosmic shore remains pristine and untouched. The great galactic silence remains absolute. The 60-year silence, however, is not a failure of the search. It is in fact its most profound, its most significant, and its most deeply unsettling result. In the rigorous, unforgiving grammar of the scientific method, an absence of evidence, particularly when the search has been sufficiently thorough and prolonged, slowly and inexorably begins to transform into evidence of absence. Every quiet, uneventful night at the telescope, every petabyte of beautiful but stubbornly natural, unstructured cosmic static adds another layer of statistical weight to a conclusion that is at once scientifically exhilarating and philosophically terrifying. The silence is not a passive void, not a simple lack of results. It is a hard data point, a piece of empirical evidence of the highest order, and it is beginning to speak with a voice that is louder, clearer, and more challenging than any signal we could have ever hoped to receive. It challenges our most cherished and deeply held assumptions about our own importance and our place in the universe. It forces us with an uncomfortable and insistent pressure to confront a series of stark, unavoidable, and increasingly dark possibilities. The silence is not a passive backdrop to our search. It has become an active, powerful, and deeply unsettling participant in the great cosmic dialogue, a quiet but insistent voice that questions the very foundations of our hope. The most direct, the most straightforward, and the most parsimonious interpretation of the great silence is the one that is both the simplest to state and the most devastating to our ingrained sense of cosmic specialness, that we are for all intents and purposes utterly and completely alone. Or if not entirely literally alone in the incomprehensible near-infinite vastness of the observable universe, then we are the only technological intelligence currently active in our entire home galaxy, the Milky Way. This is the central sobering tenet of the rare Earth hypothesis, a scientific argument which posits that the long, complex and deeply contingent chain of events necessary to produce a technologically advanced species like our own is so astronomically, so ludicrously, so profoundly improbable that it may in fact have happened only once in the history of our galaxy. The argument is a powerful one. It requires not just a planet, but the right kind of planet, orbiting the right kind of star, in the right, quiet, and stable neighborhood of the galaxy, far from the deadly radiation of the galactic core and the disruptive gravity of dense star clusters. It requires a stable planetary system with large outer gas giants to act as cosmic bodyguards, sweeping away the constant rain of deadly comets and asteroids from the inner solar system. It requires a terrestrial, rocky planet of the right mass with the right chemical composition and with a large stabilizing moon to prevent its axial tilt from wobbling chaotically and creating catastrophic climate swings. It requires the presence of active plate tectonics to regulate the planet's climate over geological timescales and to cycle essential nutrients between the crust and the oceans. It requires the mysterious, still unexplained, and perhaps unique event of abiogenesis, the spontaneous emergence of life from non-living chemistry, and even then the path is not clear. It requires the incredibly difficult and perhaps rare evolutionary leap from simple prokaryotic life to complex eukaryotic cells. It requires the evolution of multicellularity, of consciousness, of language, and finally the emergence of a single species with the unique and perhaps paradoxical combination of intelligence, curiosity, manual dexterity, and social cooperation to develop science and technology. The rare Earth hypothesis suggests that this entire long and fragile sequence is not a common convergent path of cosmic evolution, but is instead a cosmic lottery win of such staggering, unimaginable odds that we are its sole, lonely, and perhaps tragic beneficiaries. In this stark and humbling view, the sky is silent for the most straightforward and most logical of reasons. There is simply no one else out there to make a sound. The silence is the sound of a truly deeply empty cosmos. A second, more hopeful and perhaps more plausible class of explanations suggests that we are not alone, but are simply and perhaps comically failing to listen in the right way or at the right time. The cosmic haystack is not just vast, it is a multi-dimensional parameter space of almost infinite complexity. We have, with our 60 years of searching, surveyed a significant and impressive number of stars, but they represent a tiny, almost insignificant fraction of the 400 billion suns that populate our home galaxy. We have listened with incredible sensitivity on billions of distinct radio channels, but the electromagnetic spectrum is, for all practical purposes, infinite in its range and its potential for modulation. And most importantly, we have been listening for only 60 years, a vanishingly absurdly small instant in the 13 billion year life of our galaxy. Perhaps civilizations are common, but they are also long-lived, wise, and deeply conscious of the laws of thermodynamics. Broadcasting a powerful omnidirectional beacon, a signal sent out equally in all directions, is an act of colossal, almost insane inefficiency and wastefulness. An advanced, mature civilization would almost certainly communicate using highly directional, tightly focused beams of energy, like a laser or a maser, sent with pinpoint accuracy from one star system directly to its intended recipient. The chance of our tiny planet Earth randomly and momentarily intersecting one of these fleeting pencil-thin beams of communication is statistically indistinguishable from zero, or perhaps, and even more likely, their primary methods of communication have long since transcended the clumsy and noisy electromagnetic spectrum entirely. They may be using modulated neutrinos, which can pass through entire planets without interacting. They may be communicating with gravitational waves, subtle ripples in the fabric of space-time itself. Or they may be using forms of communication based on the bizarre and deeply mysterious principles of quantum entanglement or extra-dimensional physics technologies that are to our current science indistinguishable from pure magic. In this far more optimistic view, the Great Silence is a reflection not of an empty and lonely cosmos, but of our own profound and deeply humbling technological immaturity. We are like an isolated pre-contact tribe on a remote and forgotten island, trying with all our might to detect the bustling global fiber optic internet with a pair of hollowed-out gourds and a piece of vine. The great galactic conversation may be happening all around us at every moment, but we currently lack the fundamental senses, the basic conceptual framework to even begin to perceive it. This leads us to a third, more speculative, more unsettling, and more philosophically challenging set of hypotheses, those that propose with a chilling and compelling logic that the silence is not natural but is in fact a deliberate, artificial, and carefully maintained state. The zoo hypothesis, in its most common form, suggests that advanced intelligent civilizations are not only aware of our existence, but are actively and collaboratively concealing their presence from us. In this scenario, the Earth is a designated cosmic preserve, a protected wildlife sanctuary, a sociological or biological experiment of immense value that must be allowed to develop and evolve without the devastating and unpredictable contamination of outside contact. The profound silence of the sky is the invisible, impenetrable wall of this cosmic enclosure, a perfectly enforced galaxy-wide quarantine. A much darker and perhaps more plausible variation on this theme is the now famous dark forest hypothesis. This idea, drawn from the realm of speculative fiction, but grounded in a ruthless game-theoretical logic, posits that the galaxy is a deeply and fundamentally hostile and predatory environment. In a dark and menacing forest filled with countless hidden hunters, the only rational long-term survival strategy is to remain perfectly, absolutely, and paranoidly silent. To make any sound, to emit any signal, to broadcast your existence in any way, is to instantly and irrevocably paint a target on your back, to reveal your location to other, older, more powerful, and potentially ruthless hunters who may see you as a threat, as a competitor, or simply as a resource to be eliminated and consumed. In this terrifying and deeply paranoid model, the great silence is not empty. It is the sound of everyone, everywhere, holding their breath in a state of perpetual existential fear. Our own naive, exuberant, and continuous radio, television, and radar broadcasts are in this view. The reckless, idiotic cries of a lost and foolish child blundering noisily through the dark and alerting every predator for 100 light years in every direction to its precise and vulnerable location. While these grand and untestable ideas must for now remain in the realm of pure speculation, the hard empirical data gathered during the 60-year search allows us for the first time in human history to place real, meaningful, and scientifically valid constraints on the terms of the famous Drake equation. This equation, first formulated by Frank Drake himself in 1961, is not a tool for producing a precise answer, but is rather a powerful probabilistic argument, a simple and elegant way of organizing our profound ignorance. It is a string of 7 distinct factors that, when multiplied together, provide a rough estimate of the number of currently active, detectable technological civilizations in our galaxy. The final and by far the most uncertain and most critical term in this equation is L, the average lifetime of a technological civilization, the length of time during which it remains active and detectable. The stark empirical and now statistically significant fact that we have not detected any signals from the many thousands of nearby sun-like star systems, many of which are known to host planetary systems and are billions of years older than our own, provides a powerful and deeply sobering piece of indirect evidence. It strongly, powerfully suggests that the value of L may be tragically and universally short. This is the cold, hard logic of the Great Filter hypothesis. The idea that there exists somewhere on the long evolutionary path, from simple life to a galaxy-spanning super-civilization, some universal and almost insurmountable barrier, some great and terrible test that almost every species fails. This filter could optimistically be in our distant past. Perhaps the origin of life itself is the great, nearly impossible hurdle. But the deafening silence of our galactic neighbors strongly implies that the Great Filter may very well lie in our immediate future. It suggests that technological civilizations, upon reaching a certain level of power, may have a built-in, almost inevitable, and perhaps inescapable tendency to self-destruct, whether through nuclear war, runaway climate change, uncontrolled artificial intelligence, genetically engineered plagues, or some other, as yet unforeseen consequence of their own brilliant ingenuity. The silence in this dark and deeply troubling interpretation is the sound of a vast cosmic graveyard. It is the collective whispering echo of the billions of failed civilizations that have come before us. The search for others then becomes something far more urgent and more personal. It becomes a desperate search for evidence that anyone anywhere has managed to survive the great and terrible test that we as a species are now at this very moment beginning to face. So, where do we go from here? In the face of 6 long decades of profound, unwavering, and statistically significant silence, the question of whether to continue the search is a legitimate, a necessary, and a deeply pressing one. Is it finally time to accept the null result as a definitive answer? Is it time to conclude that we are, for all practical and functional purposes, alone in our corner of the cosmos, and to turn our limited resources, our finite attention, our collective will back to the immediate, tangible, and escalating problems of our own fragile world? This is a powerful, a logical, and a deeply pragmatic argument. The quest for alien intelligence can easily be framed as a profound and unforgivable luxury for a species that is actively grappling with the existential threats of climate change, global poverty, political instability, and pandemic disease. The silence can be read quite reasonably as the universe's final and unambiguous answer to our childish questions. There is no one coming to save us. There is no ancient galactic wisdom to be inherited. We are on our own. Our destiny, for better or for worse, is entirely and solely in our own hands. To continue to stare out at the empty sky is to abdicate our responsibility to the very real and burning ground beneath our feet. And yet, the counter-argument, the case for continuing the search, is equally, if not more, compelling. The true value of SETI has never been solely or even primarily contingent on the successful detection of a signal. The search itself, the very act of listening, has been a quiet but profoundly transformative force for human science, for our culture, and for our collective self-perception. In the process of searching for another alien mind, we have been forced as never before to contemplate the strange, emergent, and perhaps unique nature of our own consciousness. In the process of looking for other habitable worlds, we have come to understand with a new and humbling clarity the precious, fragile, and perhaps singular uniqueness of our own biosphere. SETI provides the ultimate cosmic perspective, a view from a metaphorical mountain so high that all of our terrestrial concerns are thrown into a stark and clarifying relief. It reframes the whole bloody and chaotic sweep of human history, with all its glorious triumphs and its pathetic tribal conflicts, as the brief adolescent story of a single nascent and perhaps deeply flawed intelligence awakening on a single, tiny and vulnerable planet. From the grand, silent vantage point of the search, the petty squabbling divisions that define our politics, the lines on our maps, the colours of our flags, the tenets of our religions are revealed to be the meaningless territorial disputes of a single frightened family trapped together on a small lifeboat adrift in an immense and indifferent ocean. To abandon the search would be to abandon this perspective. It would be an act of profound intellectual and spiritual retreat, a deliberate closing of the door on the biggest, the oldest, and the most important questions we are capable of asking. It would be to accept the great cosmic silence, not as a deep and fascinating mystery to be solved, but as a final, depressing, and immutable verdict on our own cosmic insignificance. The unassailable truth is the search has barely begun. Our technologies, and thus our ability to listen, are on the steep upward slope of an exponential curve of improvement. The next generation of radio telescopes, like the vast continent-spanning square-kilometre array currently under construction in Australia and South Africa, will have a raw sensitivity that dwarfs every single instrument that has come before it. It will be an ear so powerful that it could in theory detect the faint, stray radio leakage equivalent to an airport radar system from a planet orbiting a star 50 light-years away. The James Webb Space Telescope and its even more powerful successors will give us for the first time the ability to directly and systematically scan the atmospheres of hundreds of potentially habitable Earth-like exoplanets, searching for the telltale chemical biosignatures, the oxygen, the methane, the water vapor, that could tell us within our own lifetimes if life itself is a common or a rare phenomenon in the cosmos. And the systematic, forensic search for technosignatures is a discipline that is still in its absolute infancy. We are only now in this current decade developing the sophisticated computational techniques and the dedicated observational strategies required to systematically hunt for the faint infrared waste heat of alien megastructures or the subtle, artificial pollutants of a distant extraterrestrial industry. To stop the search now at this very moment of technological blossoming would be an act of historical folly. It would be akin to the great seafaring explorers of the 15th century, having just perfected the design of the ocean-worthy caravel, deciding to turn their ships back to port for good just as their lookout spotted the first faint and unfamiliar outline of a new and unknown continent on the far horizon. And so the vigil in all likelihood will continue. The quiet, patient and often lonely work in the darkened, silent control rooms will go on. The tireless, silent hum of the world's most powerful supercomputers endlessly sifting through the cosmic static will not cease. The patient, unblinking and majestic gaze of the great steel dishes turned like hopeful flowers toward the silent, star-filled night will not falter. The 60-year silence is a long, it is a lonely, and it is a deeply sobering scientific result. But 60 years is nothing to a star. It is nothing to a galaxy. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence requires a new kind of timescale, a form of institutional and cultural patience that transcends the short, frantic lifespan of a single human being and operates on a level that is civilizational, geological, and perhaps even astronomical. It is a great and noble project that we in this generation have started in the humble and uncertain hope that our distant descendants, our children's children's children, might one day see it through to its conclusion. It is a profound and beautiful expression of our hope for the future of our own species, and a testament to our unquenchable, perhaps defining curiosity about our own deep past and our ultimate cosmic context. It is the hope, however faint, however distant, that one day the monotonous universal hiss of the cosmos will be broken by a single, structured, beautiful, and undeniably artificial signal. A signal that does not vanish, a signal that repeats, a signal that can be verified and celebrated by observatories all across our planet. A signal that carries with it a message of such profound and earth-shattering weight that it will forever and irrevocably divide the whole of human history into two distinct and unequal eras: the long, lonely and frightened time when we thought we were alone in the universe, and the new, awe-filled, and perhaps even more frightening time when we knew with an absolute and world-changing certainty that we were not. Until that day comes, if it ever comes, the choice remains before us. Do we resign ourselves to the quiet, to the darkness, and to the apparent solitude of our world? Or do we continue with a defiant and perhaps irrational hope to build better ears and more powerful eyes, and to listen with ever greater intent, with ever greater patience, straining to hear a single kindred and welcoming voice in the magnificent, the beautiful, and the absolutely terrifying silence of the night. The search itself is the embodiment of our collective answer. To continue to listen is to continue to hope,